So today's video is going to address something that's been sort of an ongoing controversy, an ongoing thing on my channel for a long time. And that is the fact that I absolutely hate this pedal, the Tube Screamer. I think this is without a doubt one of the most overrated pedals of all time. I don't understand why so many people like these things, why so many people have adopted these and become disciples of the Tube Screamer sound. I think they're muddy, I think they're dull, and I don't like what they do to the tone of any of my guitars through any of my amps. I really don't get it. However, a very good friend of mine, Zach Broyles of Mythos Pedals and the Dipped in Tone podcast, a podcast that he and I have been doing together for over a year now, Zach is trying to change my mind. He's trying to convince me that Tube Screamers are great. He is a disciple of the Tube Screamer himself. So he bought me two identical TS9 Tube Screamers. One of them, I believe this one here, he modified, and one of them is stock. I don't know what mods he's done. I don't know how it sounds. I haven't played it yet at all. I literally just unboxed these yesterday from the mail. So in today's video, I'm gonna tell you exactly why I think the Tube Screamer sucks, and we're gonna try the modded one to see if Zach fixed the inherent problems with the Tube Screamer circuit. And I know that I'm probably pissing a lot of you off by saying this, but I wholeheartedly believe it. I don't think the Tube Screamer is really that great. So there's a few different reasons, starting with the type of guitars and amps that I like to play. If you just cut all the pedals out of it, the sort of bass tone, the foundational tone that I like is a pretty mid-focused, punchy guitar, a Les Paul, a P90 guitar, a Telecaster with a pretty hot set of pickups, going into an amp that's set to the edge of breakup. Now, if you're not familiar with the term edge of breakup, I made a video on that, which you can check out up here. But typically the amps that I like and the tone that I like is one that's already pretty broken up and already pretty mid-rangey, pretty punchy in the mid-range. The thing about Tube Screamers is that they're known for adding a lot of mid-range. They are pretty mid-rangey pedals, and when you're playing with a starting tone that's already pretty mid-rangey, you don't need more mid-range on top of that. So I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. Right now I've got my Les Paul going into my Hiwatt Custom 20, into a 112 cab, and this is a good example of a sort of bass tone that I would start with. I think that's a pretty nice sounding amp. Now on this little test pedal board of science that we have here, I've got the two Tube Screamers and a Morning Glory. The unmodded Tube Screamer is on the right. The modded Tube Screamer is in the middle, which I have not played yet. And then on the very end, I have the JHS Morning Glory, which is indicative of a type of overdrive that I really love, which is a blues breaker style overdrive or a more transparent style overdrive. So I'm gonna start by just kicking on the TS9. All the controls are set at noon. This is not necessarily how you would set up a Tube Screamer, but that's set evenly between the three pedals. So obviously you can tell there that that TS9 is pretty drastically changing the character of the amp. A lot of that bright, shiny, brilliant top end that the amp has, the Tube Screamer is taming. And then the mid-range character is getting shifted to a place that I don't really dig. It's getting more nasally, it's getting more muddy in a way. So now we're gonna kick on the Morning Glory, and you should see what I mean by a more transparent overdrive sound. So to my ears in the room, the Morning Glory is keeping the overall feel and tonality and sound of the original amp intact. It's just adding more. There's more gain. The top end is a little bit more present. it's giving me more of what I already like. It's not drastically changing the character of my guitar and amp. I don't necessarily want my overdrive to completely shift and completely change that tone and mask it with a sheen of that overdrive's character. I want it to stay intact, and I want my overdrive to just give me a little bit more.
Kind of smells like corn chips, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it does.
McKinley?
I put a Frito in there.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, going to start by removing some of these components. Start with the LED. Okay. Kind of prepared that one earlier. Okay, now going to remove the components on the PCB. Tiny clipping diodes, so small. These parts over here are part of the 808 mod. People so famously do. Okay. Oh, yeah. Sometimes they just fall right out.
All right, now I can already hear you in the comments saying, well, Rhett, that's not how anybody runs a Tube Screamer. Nobody gets a TS9 and sets all of the controls at noon. And I completely agree. I think you're right. One of the most common ways and popular ways to use a Tube Screamer pedal is to actually turn the gain down and use it more as a boost pedal going into the front of the amp. So let's try that. I'm gonna bring the gain control down to like 10 o'clock here, and then I'm gonna boost my level, and I'm gonna keep the tone about the same, and we're gonna see what that sounds like. That is alleviating the initial problem I was having with the mid-range. It sounds more transparent, but I don't like what it's doing with the top end. And this is another thing that I don't like about the Tube Screamer circuit is the way the tone control works. If you roll it all the way down, it tends to get really dark and muddy way too fast. And then if you roll it all the way up, it gets super bright and harsh. Yeah, I can't even listen to that in the room. It's too bright. So you don't have a ton of control over the tonality of the pedal, even when you're using it as a boost. And so I would say if you're gonna use a Tube Screamer as a boost, just use a boost pedal. Any boost pedal, I think, would be as good or a better option than something like this TS9 here. So I've got this exotic RC booster as an example, and I would choose this over a Tube Screamer for two different reasons. One, I have a 2-band EQ control on here. I have treble and bass, so I can dial in my tone setting a little easier there. And then two, I've got different gain settings, so I can use it just as a clean boost, just to kick the front end a little bit harder, or I can stack another gain stage on top of it and basically turn it into an overdrive. That's just one example of a boost pedal that I would choose over a TS9.
Okay, so now we're going to install some of the components. We replaced some of these electrolytic with film caps. This helps kind of tame some inherent background hiss. Some people would argue that this doesn't really do much of anything. I do it anyway, and we're not going to put back in that cap that goes in that first stage because that shaves off high end. And the Tube Screamer kind of needs a little bit more treble poking through. So next we're going to put in this cap. This is going to give this pedal a little bit more low end and hopefully combat some of that inherent honkiness. Alright, next we're going to change some of these resistors. R4 on my old Mythos mod sheet is this guy. We are going to change that to a 2.2K, and what that's going to do is allow the pedal to have more overall gain. Next, we are going to change R6 to a 10K. That is going to allow for there to be less gain with the gain knob at minimum. Offers up a little bit more sweep of the gain control. And all these mods are pretty simple. And then lastly, we're gonna do the 808 mod. And then because this pedal, you can never ever see the LED, we took out this resistor down here. And what we're gonna do is replace it and beef up the brightness of this thing. We're gonna make this thing a little bit easier to see.
All right, so now I'm going to try Zach's modded Tube Screamer. I have not played this before, ever. We're going to start with everything set at noon and tweak from there, and we'll see if this changes my mind on Tube Screamers. The modded version has a white LED. The non-modded version has a red LED. First reaction, it's a little bright, it's a little harsh. I'm going to roll that tone off. All right, let's try and match the stock one and see what that sounds like. That's completely different. Completely different. The stock TS9 sounds like you're taking a wool blanket and draping it over your amp. Here in the room, that's the effect. That's the best way I can describe it. It's rolling off the top end. It's like covering up the sound of the amp. The modded one is way brighter. It's really, really present in the top end, and it's more aggressive sounding overall. I don't know what I was expecting. Part of me was expecting him to make it more like a Blues Breaker overdrive, but it's not. This is something quite a bit different. Now I'm going to crank the gain and see if I can hear any difference between the stock Tube Screamers clipping and the modded one. So the best way I can put into words how this is sounding in the room, the stock Tube Screamer is taking the guitar's signal and altering it. It's taking it and sort of wadding it up and doing its thing and then spitting that out. Whereas the modded one is not so much altering, it's more so augmenting. It's taking what's there and it's adding something on top of it. It's adding something that's nice. It's adding this bite and this presence and this sort of harmonic distortion that's really, really pleasing. He did a good job on this.
Okay, so we tested it and it was crazy loud. It sounded good, but I'm going to add some clipping diodes to really help this thing break up a little more. So we're going to put in some LEDs, give this thing a little bit more sauce, and kind of shave the almost outlandish amount of output that it has. So
Okay, so what are my thoughts? I gotta hand it to Zach. He did a good job. This modded Tube Screamer does fix a lot of the inherent problems that I have with the Tube Screamer circuit. It's brighter, it's more touch responsive, it cleans up better with your volume knob. It doesn't just take your guitar signal and turn it into a muddy, mid-rangey mess like the original Tube Screamer does. It makes a better boost pedal. The tone control has a wider range to it than the stock tone control does. Even little things like fixing the LED so you can actually see when the pedal's on. These are all worthy modifications. I like this modded pedal a lot, and I can see myself starting to use this on a more daily basis. So did this change my mind on the Tube Screamer? Absolutely not. The fact that you have to take a stock Tube Screamer and modify it to give it inherent qualities that so many other overdrives and boost pedals have right out of the box, I think goes to show that the Tube Screamer is kind of overrated. I think if you're a Strat player who's strictly playing blackface Fender style amps, a mid-scooped guitar into a mid-scooped amp, and you have to do that Stevie Ray Vaughan, early John Mayer kind of thing, then sure, I can see you going for a Tube Screamer. Or if you are a metal player and you're trying to tighten up low end for a recording session, a Tube Screamer is a great option for that. It sucks a lot of the low end out of your signal. But other than that, I don't understand why so many people have adopted these pedals. When you sit in the room and compare a stock TS9 to a modded TS9 or a more transparent style overdrive, it's clear that the modded one sounds leagues better, or even a Bluesbreaker style circuit or any other type of transparent overdrive, in my opinion, sounds way better than the stock Tube Screamer. So yeah, I still don't like Tube Screamers, but Zach did succeed in building a single Tube Screamer that I actually dig. So for a list of the exact modifications and things that he did to this TS9, I'm gonna link his social media and his email in the description box down below. He's probably gonna be pissed that I did that because I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of you that are inquiring about the exact modifications done to this TS9. But if you want to, you can check out Mythos pedals down in the description box below. And while you're down there, check out the Dipped in Tone podcast. This is a podcast that Zach and I have been doing on a weekly basis for over a year now. So check that out. If you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description box down below. You can find links to my video courses like the Tone course down there, the Nashville Number System course, and the Fretboard Fundamentals course. And there are affiliate links to a lot of the gear that I used in today's video, like the TS9. If you want to buy yourself a stock TS9 to modify at home, get one through my affiliate link. It helps support the channel and helps me keep making these videos, and I really appreciate you. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and thanks to Zach from Mythos for building me a Tube Screamer I actually dig. Hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.